Hey everybody, it is Trags, and this is the Jungle Roar Skinny Bengals postgame pod, a late night edition following a very rough performance by the Cincinnati Bengals, at least defensively, dropping to 0-3 with a 38-33 loss on Monday night at Paycor Stadium to the Washington Commanders. Skinny, I must say, I thought Jayden Daniels was going to be good in his rookie year. I wasn't expecting 21 of 23 for 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, and running for another. He was just phenomenal and made the Bengals defense look silly at times.
He was, no question about that, and he's a first-round pick for a reason. Doesn't mean every first-round pick quarterback pans out, and he's panned out, quicker than the number one overall pick Caleb Williams has. But he didn't have a lot of tough throws to make tonight either, Mike. I mean, I think a lot of that was the defense was just that bad. I listen. I know, you're down to your 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th defensive tackles. That's literally what the Bengals. Well, I guess Chris Jenkins would be in the top 4, but he's playing compromised with a thumb. I realize you're compromised there. But in theory, you're not compromised at your defensive end positions. You're not compromised at linebacker. You're not compromised at corner. You're not compromised at safety. And now I feel foolish. I wrote a piece earlier in the week that maybe this defense, has got at least back to the middle of the pack, if not better than that, the way they played the first 2 games. And yeah, it was a pedestrian New England offense, but it was also game 2. It was Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City offense, and they defensively against the pass were great. Tonight opened every old wound from last year that you had defensively and then some, because it all of a sudden looks like you have one legitimate player on defense, and maybe that's not fair after tonight, and that's Trey Hendrickson, and at times, he doesn't always seem to go all out and occasionally taps out, and I think he was playing a little bit hurt tonight. But Sam Hubbard suddenly looks washed. The depth isn't that good. Your linebackers are meh. Von Bell suddenly looks old. The corners who I thought played really well the first 2 games, each one of them got burned badly. Cam Taylor, Britt, and Dax Hill. And yeah, I know, again, it's one game, and we always overreact good or bad to each game. But listen, can they recover from this and not go other games without making a team punt? No, they're going to make somebody punt again before this season's over with. But that was an egg.
Well, it was an egg, Skinny, at the worst possible time. This team needed that win.
Yes.
At 0-2 coming in, they needed a win against a team you felt you had a better roster than. Sure, their quarterback played great, like you said. You have a better roster than the Washington Commanders, and you didn't play like it. The offense came out, and the Bengals didn't punt. So, yeah, Washington didn't punt, but the Bengals didn't punt either. They had 7 possessions in Monday night's game. They had 4 touchdowns. They had 2 field goals and 1 missed field goal. And so the opportunity was there to put points on the board. And in a shootout, the Bengals misfired a couple of times in the red zone, and that was the difference. But my rambling point here, Skinny, is that the Bengals should have seized the moment after they took the lead 7-0 on that beautiful 41-yard pass from Burrow to Jamar Chase for the first touchdown of the night. You felt like, okay, this is what you expected the Bengals to do. And then they fell flat for the next 20 minutes of the game, and they couldn't afford to do that.
No, and I mean, can you blame the roster? Can you blame poor drafts? Can you blame aging players? Can you blame
Tonight? I thought it was a lack of leadership and coaching. I thought they were outcoached and had no good leadership or not effective enough leadership during the game. Sometimes you need leaders to step up, and I found Joe Burrow's comments after the game. I know I saw it. I was next to Ben Baby of ESPN. We both watched as Joe Burrow went in a different entrance to the locker room. He actually went in the coach's entrance and had a brief meeting with head coach Zac Taylor. Zac Taylor kind of brushed it off, poo-pooed it after the game,
yes,
but Joe Burrow acknowledged to Ben when he asked the question after the game, yeah, I felt I had to have a private conversation with Zac. It was all positive, but it was something that we had to talk about with regard to how that game unfolded.
So you look at tonight. So how didn't they get stops? Why didn't they get stops? I mean, it's one thing for us to say they didn't get stops. That's obvious. They didn't. But why didn't they? Why couldn't they? And maybe, was it Lou Anarumo just he was so afraid to blitz because, they were running so much of the screen game coming in the first 2 weeks, get it out of his hands that you didn't want to, have one guy miss and that suddenly turns into instead of a 6-yard screen, turns into a 60-yard play. But when you weren't getting close to getting home or pressuring the kid or making him make tough decisions or speeding up the process, he just looked so comfortable out there like he was playing a 7-on-7 game in the summer.
Well, and here's another thing I noticed as the game was progressing, and I was watching Jayden Daniels as close as I could from the press box. It looked like to me, Skinny, that there was no edge set at all to the Bengals defense, meaning if Daniels wanted to move the pocket, he could move the pocket freely at will, as far to the right or as far to the left as he wanted to get a better vision of the field. And there was no resistance to doing that. There was no accountability or no. Go ahead.
The tackles couldn't get off blocks. Sam Hubbard can't get off blocks. Joseph Osai is just an absolute wreck at the moment. And I guess that's what alarms me is where do you go from here? Listen, Sam's been through a bunch of injury stuff, and I'm going to chalk it up to that right now that he's still kind of working his way back. But is he, or have you just hit that stage of your career where you just don't have it anymore? And then you better hope you hit on Myles Murphy as a draft pick. And I'm not down on him for last year. I know a lot of people are. I would have liked to have seen him healthy from the get-go. But, there's just not a lot of depth piece there. And, again, when you only have one guy who can effectively rush the passer at the moment and you don't like to blitz a lot, and that's fine. I get what his philosophy is. It's a recipe for disaster, and you're about to hit the teeth of your schedule. I mean, don't forget, this was a month when the season started, when the schedule came out, Mike, 3-1 at a minimum. Hell, you're trying to avoid 0-4, man, and I don't know if they do.
Oh, not against Andy Dalton. Not the way the Red Rifle played against the Raiders on the road on Sunday. At this point, the Carolina Panthers should be favored, and I'm dead serious about that.
That would be crazy. That would be crazy.
Well, I mean, would you blame the boys in Vegas, as they say, if they installed Carolina as, let's say, a 1 or a 1.5 point favorite going into that game on Sunday afternoon in Carolina? It wouldn't
blame
shock
them.
me.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame. I'm going to say Bengals 2.5. I have not seen that line, either of you, so we're kind of flying blindly. But I'll still think the Bengals are a favorite. But at that point, though, I mean, this was supposed to be the month that got you into a season, got you off to a fast start for a change. Instead, not only are you fighting back from 0-2, which you've done before, now you're 0-3 fighting back. That's a tall task with what looks to be, to some degree, a flawed roster. This thing has been wonky from Jump Street with honestly starting with Trey Hendrickson back in April demanding a trade if he didn't get paid more. And it just feels like this is what this is all about for this group anymore is I got to get mine. And if I don't, well, to hell with the rest of you guys. And that feels like where it's really at the moment. And maybe that was Joe Burrow going to Zach going, well, maybe I need to be a tougher leader. Right. And maybe he does. I don't know the answer to this, Mike, because it is so flabbergasting to watch tonight that I usually try to have answers. I don't know if I do.
Let me read the quote from Joe
please.
Burrow.
Yep. I was there, but yes, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a very positive conversation. We're not happy with where we're at, but by no means is the season over. We're 0-3. There's 14 left to play. We just have to continue to get better and see where the cards fall in the next 10 weeks. We just have to go into this week preparing to get better and trying to get a win. That's all I can do. If you're a fan, yes. We're reporters. We cover this team for our jobs. If you're a fan and you hear that, what do you think?
I think you're just trying to convince yourself that you got 14 more games to play. And I get the convincing myself if I'm Joe Burrow. I mean, you think you're winning every game. I mean, I guarantee there's a lot of guys that think we're going to win the last 14 games and go 14-3. And I think that's a great attitude to have. But at what stage do guys start to check out? And while the injury bug has hit the interior defensive line, and the offense played well tonight, to your point, I mean, they could have done a little bit better in the red zone. They were 2 for 4 there in converting red zone trips into touchdowns, and this was a game you had to do that. Once Amarius Mims came on the field, you literally had, for the most part, all your guys on deck on offense. And at some point, that is going to have some attrition. What happens on defense when they don't trust DJ Turner to put him on the field at the moment? So what happens when a cornerback goes down? What happens if Von Bell didn't play tonight? They're going to have to play Jordan Battle, and they don't trust him any more than the man on the moon at the moment.
That shocks me. Why do they not trust Jordan? I thought Jordan Battle had made, according to many coaches we spoke to, according to Zach, according to Lou, that Jordan Battle had made strides in training camp and in the preseason. He was starting to become a leader and really get the concepts that Lou was trying to teach on defense. That surprises me.
I'm going to say this, and you know this as well as anybody, but I'm going to say it, and I'll probably have to be bleeped out, so I'll bleep myself. Coaches are full of they just are. I mean, they honestly are. And that's part of the issue here is we try to take them at their word, and we know with the wink, wink and a nod, nod, that when we ask questions that we know that they're ducking or don't give you a good answer to, that there's a reason for that. I'm looking all of a sudden. I hate to do this because it feels like I'm overstating this at 0-3 because teams, you're allowed to dig out of this hole, but this is a flawed roster. It really is.
I'm a little surprised to be saying that 3 games in because maybe I'm overly optimistic, but I thought that this team, if they had their pieces on the field and they got T back, they do what they do offensively tonight. And I thought, certainly they had a representative offensive effort.
Very much. Tonight was a winning offensive performance. Yeah.
With any kind of defensive shutdown, one possession. If one of those touchdowns don't score tonight, I think the Bengals win the game.
No,
I single stop.
I agree with that, and I guess it goes back to and shame on me for writing what I wrote. I really thought this defense had taken some major strides, and maybe it was nothing more than New England isn't going to wind up being very good. They're just not, especially on offense, and they did just enough to win. And quite frankly, I'm not sure Kansas City's the dynamic team we remember them being. I think they're efficient at times. They still can make a couple plays here and there, and to their credit, that's how they find a way to win games. Is they're not winning as much with offense as they are with complementary football. And I guess, Mike, that's the part of this is this team right now doesn't play complementary football. Week 1 was defense did enough, offense didn't come close. Last week, okay, both sides did enough, but not enough to win the game. And tonight it was the offense did enough and the defense didn't. And is this going to be a trend of, you've covered enough baseball too, of boy, days we hit, we didn't pitch, days we pitch, we didn't hit. Yep. What a crazy season this was. Well, this feels like that kind of a season.
All right, I'm going to read one more quote from Joe Burrow, and then we'll move on. Did you find yourself needing to do anything different from a leadership style when you're 0-3 heading into a must-win game next week? I thought tonight was must-win, but whatever.
I did too. Yeah, exactly.
Here's Joe Burrow's answer. There will be some critical thinking I'll have to do to see what kind of leader I want to be going forward and what I feel like the team needs from me going forward. That to me is the most telling quote of his, whatever it was, 5-6 minute session with the media.
So I guess here's my question in that regard, Mike, and I don't know what to read into that when I heard it. Is that mean that Joe needs to be a yeller and a screamer? Does that mean that Joe needs to hold the other side of the football accountable? Does it? I don't know what that means. I will say this, and I think this is part of this league right now, because the money has gotten so silly, and I'm not jealous of the money. Good, you guys go make yours, but money changes everything. It's all cute when everybody's on their rookie contracts and they're all striving together, and then suddenly it's I got to get mine. Well, Burrow's got his, and if I'm Jamar Chase, there's a part of me that goes, "Hey man, shut up! You got yours, I ain't got mine." Same for T. Higgins. Hey man, I ain't listening to that. Say, you got yours, I ain't got mine. And I think it feels like we're kind of in that wonky area of. Those that didn't get theirs are pissed they didn't get theirs. Those that got theirs, I got mine. I hate that that's where it is. This feels kind of Dallas Cowboys like. CD and Dak got theirs. Good for them. Good for you guys. The rest of your team sucks.
Yes, indeed. Okay, let's get in terms of one person that needs to be held accountable on Monday night.
I know where this is going.
Cam Taylor-Britt.
Yep.
Okay. He comes out and says what I think got misconstrued a little bit. I'll give him a little bit of grace here. When he talked about Cliff Kingsbury and the nice college offense that the Commanders were running, what I think he was trying to say is, look, they have Jayden Daniels in a really good system, similar to what a lot of colleges run, and he just ran at LSU, and he's in a comfortable position, and if they run that against us, they're going to have some success. that I think got misconstrued. But still, the optics. We're
Yes.
talking optics here.
Yes.
The optics of what Cam Taylor Britt said a week after saying he was going to do to Xavier Worthy, essentially what he did, but he
did.
came out and said some strong things about Xavier Worthy. It doesn't look good when you get beat deep by Terry McLaurin for 55 yards, and 2 plays later, Jayden Daniels is running it in.
Yeah, look, Washington had not pushed it down the field the first 2 weeks. There were those that cover that team, and national people were wondering, well, why are you doing this? And some of it was, I think they were easing Jayden Daniels in, and it is a college offense. When you're throwing little screens outside and getting out of the hands quick and letting him scramble around, it is a college offense. Cliff Kingsbury was an effective college coach. He wasn't a great NFL coach, but he the offense was effective. But you say that and you open yourself up, and it's just needless. And so then guess what happens? One of the few times they do push it down the field in tonight's game, he gets beat. Well, man, karma's a bitch, and I like Cam a lot. I do. He's a likable kid. He's really smart. He's fun to talk to. To his credit, he knew. I mean, there's 8 or 10 of us that marched over to his locker right away, and he knew what we were. He knew it, and he turned around and faced it. And I always respect that kind of stuff. First question, Kelsey Conway from the Enquirer asked him about, do you regret it? He said, I don't regret it. Well, maybe you should. And I'll be honest, Mike, I thought Zac Taylor in his press conference was at his wit's end a little bit with some of this talk, right? And this was this felt like final. So, I mean, the week before, Jamar Chase says, we're the best team in the AFC. Everybody knows it. Well, bro, you're not. You haven't won a game. You're one of the worst in the NFL at the moment, literally by record, man. So you ain't the best in the AFC at the moment. Just honestly, fellas, I get some of the talk. I do. I get it. Sports. I don't like it. I've never liked it. I as a coach, I tell my guys, you get teed up for talking trash, you might as well just go to the locker room because you're done for a while. You can talk it, just don't get caught doing it. I don't want to hear it, and I wouldn't want to hear it with this stuff either. And if you need that to motivate you, give me a break. I mean, I would think winning would be motivating enough in theory that you don't need to do that kind of stuff. And honestly, it's bit Cam in the ass both weeks. To your point, he did shut down Xavier Worthy, but Rashee Rice got him for a long touchdown. And Cam's had a really good year, but 2 plays, big plays against him cost the Bengals dearly. One was a touchdown in a 1-point game. Today was a long ball that set up a touchdown in a 5-point game. You may not regret it, but how about just shut up? And I think if it's, if Zac Taylor had talked to him as I believe he did after the last comments, and then he does it again, that seems awful disrespectful. And that seems borderline of, we're close to the inmates running the asylum. And all this has been about with Zac Taylor has been locker room culture and all these things of, hey, even when the chips are down, everybody's in it together. Are they now? Are they really?
Okay. This is look, fans were very upset, and understandably so, Monday night. And I thought for the most part, the players inside that locker room after the loss to Washington handled it very well and handled it very professionally. Ted Karras said, if you underperform in this town and you're on the Bengals, they're going to let you hear about it. And we have to deal with it for the next couple of weeks because we dug our own holes. So we have to be accountable to the fans who are really pissed off right now. And good for Ted Karras to say that. Logan Wilson said nobody's more upset than we are as players.
Understood.
Well, and that's great, Skinny. But the fans are pretty pissed off because they're paying money for a team they thought had Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah, and now fingers get pointed at players, at front office for, maybe getting the ball rolling in the anger direction for not signing T. Higgins or signing Jamar Chase, letting Jesse Bates walk. I mean, that gets relitigated now of, hey, it was you couldn't pay Jesse Bates because you're going to pay Jamar and T. Well, you couldn't pay T because you got to pay Jamar. Well, you can't pay Jamar because, well, you don't need to pay him. And all this gets relitigated. And then guys like us, and I think it's fair, we start looking back and going, well, your draft classes have kind of sucked, and you're in the boat of you have to go out and pay free agents because you can't draft people. It's a crazy spot that they're in, and it tells you how fragile this damn league is.
So do the Bengals have enough dogs in that locker room to stand up and right this ship, whether it's Joe Burrow, whether it's Ted Karras, whether it's Sam Hubbard, Logan Wilson, or Von Bell, we assumed would be that kind of dog. do they have enough guys to stand up and say, we're going to change everything now? We're going to become a different team overnight.
I think that they do, but I also think you're one more bad loss, i.e., Carolina, away from this just imploding entirely. I mean, you can certainly listen. Good for Pittsburgh for being 3-0. All the credit in the world. They've done it with a lot of smoke and mirrors and a great defense. The defense has been outstanding. Question is, how long is the sustainability of that defense literally carrying them every single week? I think they come back to the pack. I think everybody will recognize that. And to the other point is, Baltimore's 1-2, Cleveland's 1-2, so you're chasing them by a game at the moment. You still have a chance to get yourself. You still play the 6 games against divisional teams, so you haven't played a divisional game yet, so you can fix some things there. But I think you're one more bad loss away from everybody looking around at us, them, everybody on the outside going, this team just isn't very good. And I don't know if I believe that. I mean, I don't, but the proof right now is in the pudding that there's something amiss. And boy, I wish I could completely tell fans what that amiss is. It's felt wrong, literally, as training camp progressed with Jamar Chase standing on that damn sideline.
Yeah, and by the way, something we haven't mentioned, I think having T. Higgins back on the field Monday night was a big deal. I really do think that made Jamar Chase happier. Chase had
he got some single coverage.
Yeah, right. It was the first drive of the game. We saw that. I'm telling you, Burrow, there were some reports that Burrow had his hand wrapped in a bandage from near his elbow all the way down to his wrist and around his thumb. But apparently it's not a big deal. It wasn't a cast, but it's probably something precautionary. We haven't heard anything from Burrow. After the game, Burrow said he felt great, feels fine, and he certainly threw the ball on target on Monday night. But to Jamar Chase, to the point about Jamar Chase, 6 catches, 7 targets, 118 yards, got into the end zone for the first 2 times this year. Andre Yoshavash had his first had a touchdown. So he's got 3 touchdowns, I believe it is.
Yeah, it's crazy.
In 2 games. He's been very productive. T. Higgins back on the field, 3 catches, 6 targets, 39 yards, almost had a spectacular catch in the back of the end zone. How do you think T looked?
They look good. I mean, he looked physical. Made some nice catch and runs. To your point, almost made a spectacular catch in the back of the end zone. That was a terrible ball from Joe, to be honest with you. Thought it was late. It was high. T went up and snatched it, but all he could get was 1 foot down. That was disappointing because that would have been a touchdown there. I didn't expect him to come back and go 6 for 120. I would just hope that whatever his impact is, he'd have some impact from a production standpoint, but more of an impact from an overall schematic standpoint. I think you continue to see Eric All perform well. Again, this was a winning performance from the offense. I mean, it really was. That's the part of it. But to your other point, we talk about the whole health thing. I still worry about Joe Burrow's health moving forward too. I mean, it feels like it's a week-to-week proposition at the moment as well.
Yeah, and I even hate to throw this out there, but if things really go south, and let's say they don't get it done in Carolina and they lose at home to Baltimore and they're 0-5, Joe Burrow has to start asking himself, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I mean, if the wrist is hurting.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's my other fear to this is you're also a bad loss away from maybe dudes making business decisions of, the quad doesn't feel quite right this week, and I'm not going to go risk it for this. I'm just not.
I'm sorry, but
I've seen it before.
Top of that list, if we're throwing Joe Burrow out of that equation, top of that list would be Jamar Chase.
No question, and I would understand it. It sucks. Again, that's the business side of this that just gets ugly. And I don't know what the answer is because listen, I know everybody wants everybody to get paid. It just doesn't happen that way. I mean, how's it working out for Dallas paying Dak and CD? It ain't working out so good. How's it working out for Cleveland paying a quarterback all that guaranteed money that they'd love to freaking bench, and they should freaking bench, but they're paying him all this guaranteed money. You can look and go, well, Justin Jefferson got paid. Yes, that's right. And then they were going to start over with a rookie contract for a quarterback. And instead they've got a sweetheart deal with a journeyman Sam Darnold, and that's worked out great, but they're not paying Sam Darnold. They're paying Justin Jefferson. And I think teams need to really look hard at this damn business model of what to do moving forward, of what are the positions that are hardest to fill in this league year to year coming out of the draft. And to me, that there's edge rusher, there's offensive tackle, there's corner. I don't think wide receiver is that position. I think you can draft a wide receiver as far down as the third round who can come in and be productive right away. And I know people, you can just right now yell at me for that. I'm not saying don't pay Jamar Chase. I'm still saying be careful with paying Jamar Chase, because I don't know if a quarterback and a wide receiver on huge guaranteed monies is a recipe for success, especially for a team, Mike, that drafts as horribly as this team drafts.
What do you have up on Local 12?
We got stuff from the Zac Taylor press conference, a story from what he said. I'm writing a column basically talking about how tough this team talks, but how untough this team plays. Got a gamer up, game story up from the game itself. We'll have this podcast up and much, much more. There's a couple other things we got up that I'm drawing a complete blank on at the moment.
And that is quite all right. We'll have plenty of coverage up on CLNS, Cincy.com, game coverage, as well as this podcast. That is Richard Skinner. You can follow him on the X at Local12Skinny. Please follow all of his great coverage on local12.com as well. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags, and this has been the Jungle Roar Skinny Bengals postgame pod following a 38-33 loss to the Washington Commanders. The Bengals, almost inconceivably now, are 0-3, short rest to take on their old friend, the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, and the now 1-2 Carolina Panthers. That'll be Sunday in Charlotte. I want to thank everybody for downloading this episode of the Jungle Roar Skinny Bengals postgame pod. We'll catch you next week.